I can remember my son just losing his mind. We lived in this rental house and we were cleaning out drawers at the end of like the season. And there was this pair of 3T shorts. They were just like khaki elastic waist shorts. They were not special. And he was losing his mind because we were getting rid of them. Like they're too small for him. And he was our youngest son. We had two girls after him. So we were just like putting them in the pile to give away. And he was so upset. And here's the thing, he was 6 years old. These 3T shorts barely squeezed over that tushy anymore. They were not comfortable. And by no means were they an effective piece of clothing. And I think sometimes when I am dealing with change, I think back to that incident, like standing in that room and thinking, oh my gosh, why can't he let go? And I think, oh my gosh, why can't I let go? And I wonder about you, if you are here live or you're in the comments, what about change is hard for you? Sally had mentioned in the comments that sometimes it's moving on to the next thing super quickly, like finish what you start before you move on. I never leave the other things behind though. I just keep building like a Dr. Seuss car of things that is super inefficient and ineffective. And as leaders, one of the things that we have to do and you have to do is move through change. And as a human, one of the things that we have to do is move through change. And I noticed a few weeks ago that TED has changed basically their tagline and a little bit of their mission. So it used to be ideas worth spreading. And they looked at what was happening in the future and where they were going to go. And they decided to change to ideas change everything. And I think sometimes, okay, first of all, when I saw that, I was like, no, but I love that. And I didn't really want to let go of that idea of the idea worth spreading. But when I thought about it, the thing I loved about the change was that ideas do change everything. Like you have to start with an idea. And so even when a brand that I love as a TEDx speaker and as somebody who enjoys TED, I didn't want to let go of that idea. Sometimes that fear of what other people think also impacts our ability to create change. And so, as I was thinking about this, I wanted to bring to you the fact that I'm doing some changes and just kind of a peek behind the curtain of what my process is right now and making a what feels like a big shift. I don't know if it actually is a big shift, but it feels like a big shift in the way I am getting resources to you, the way I'm doing the live, the way I'm doing the podcast, the way I'm using social media. And I'm just in the midst of it all. And so if you're in the midst of change, I wanted to help you see how change can be really positive and how to go about that in a really healthy way. Because as a leader, you're always not only going to be changing, but you have to lead through the change. So I've got some questions that I'm asking myself that I'm going to share with you, and some things that can get in the way, some roadblocks that you might also face. So I'd love your questions as we go through, whether you are here on Instagram or you are watching on Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube. Feel free to drop those questions in the comments. And even if you're watching the replay later, I will come back and answer in the comments. So the first thing are some questions I've been asking that have been prompting the change. And the first one is it working? Is it working? So for me, one of the things that I'm wanting to do, besides provide really great thought leadership, and the thing I want to do in the world is create change. And I want to create the change around creating positive workplace culture, that we would transform global workplace culture so people want to come to work, and that we solve the complex people issues that happen whenever people get together. And how do we learn how to embrace those issues? And how do we learn how to come together and work well together and have a people-centered and purpose-driven place that is also profitable? Like, that's a really big mission. And so, but it also means that I need clients, that I have to book speaking gigs. So there is a component of my work that is business development, that is sales. And so I'm not only measuring my progress based on our workplaces changing, but also am I getting into workplaces to help them create change? And so I have to measure, is it working? Am I getting into the places I want to get into? Am I talking to the people I want to talk to? Is the email newsletter that I'm sending helping people create that change? Am I getting into the places to help them create change? So for you, whatever it is that you're doing, is there something that just feels like it's not working? Like it's not doing what I want it to do? That's a great question to ask whenever you kind of feel that friction or that like I can couple weeks ago, I was literally on the phone with my husband standing at the edge of our driveway, just like, "Oh, why can't I get this? Why isn't this working?" And that is a great sign that something needs to change. And so asking yourself, is it working, is a really important question when you're approaching change. Because sometimes, like to Sally's comment, that we just change because it's starting to get a little boring, a little tedious, but we don't actually know if it's working or not. So always asking yourself, is it working? Is a really important question when you're facing change. So the next thing, kind of back to the story about my son's shorts. Does it fit? Does it fit anymore? So as I have been in business now, I'm realizing that this is my 6th year in business. And that was just kind of shocking to me. I just didn't really realize that first, because when I started, I didn't realize I'd started a business. So sometimes we don't recognize what we're doing until we're already in it. But the things that I did really early on in my business don't fit anymore because I've grown, because my business has grown. I now have a team. I'm doing slightly different work in the way that I'm solving this problem in the world of complex people issues that just make work suck. And so the way that I'm doing it feels a little different. And it some of the things that I have been doing don't quite fit anymore. So that happens as we go through changes in life. When I started this business, it was pre-COVID. I had 4 kids at home that none of them were driving. I don't think. I know maybe one. Nope, none of them were driving yet. My husband was working, just started a new job himself. Like it was a very different place than right now. We have 2 college students, one who's graduating this year from high school, one who's also going to graduate in the fall or in the winter from university. We'll only have one at home. The way that I talk about my business, it's just a different place. If it doesn't fit anymore, because I think sometimes I get caught up in oh, I got to keep it. I loved that, just like Stuart loved those shorts, but they didn't fit anymore. And so there's a little bit of an emotional process that happens there. I was like, oh, because I think we can lie to ourselves and say, well, I was doing it wrong then, rather than, no, it just doesn't fit anymore. We grow out of things. Yeah, Shelby, it's like, oh yeah, we grow out of things, but we don't think about that once we've passed like the phases of childhood. We still grow out of things. And that's usually good growth. We want to grow. And so we want our businesses to grow. You want your career to grow. Maybe you want to move up in your organization, and the things that got you to that place might not fit in your new place anymore. And so asking this question, like, does it fit? And so checking in with your gut, checking in with your emotions. If you get my Jolt of Joyosity email on Mondays, I talked about the emotional terrorists that will hijack you. And sometimes if you're not listening to your emotions, if you're all out of whack, it could be because something doesn't fit, or you're not wanting to deal with the emotions around that positive growth. Sometimes it's negative growth. Sometimes things happen that it's just, they don't work. You try something and it doesn't work, and it didn't fit. I mean, have you ever ordered, okay, come on, be honest. Have you ever ordered like 16 different outfits off of Amazon and got them all home and tried them on and returned more of them? Just me? I can't imagine I am the only person that's done that. They just didn't fit, or I didn't like the color, or the color, I thought I ordered a teal and it came back forest green, like just they didn't fit for whatever reasons. We don't have to assign a big set of emotional meaning to it. Like, oh, I did it wrong. I'm a terrible person. I chose wrong. I messed up. You may have messed up, or it may just be that it didn't fit. So coming back to that question of, is it working? And does it fit anymore? Have I outgrown it? And then the next question I think is really important to ask yourself is it fun? Is it fun? And we discount this one the most because, at least for me, in the Midwest, I find this Midwest work ethic that it like work isn't fun. Like you get your work done, then you can play. And like I always had to sit and do my homework at my white desk with gold trim, sitting and doing my spelling homework. Then I could go outside and play. And while that established some good work ethic in me, it also created this false dichotomy that work can't be play. And so if it doesn't feel fun, if it doesn't feel like play, at least some of the time, then it's probably time to change. It's probably time to change. Or maybe you've outgrown that piece and you need to give it to somebody else who that is fun for. I work a lot when I'm working in my Joyosity Leadership Lab or in Joyosity organizations around the power of play. That it should feel like play at least some of the time. And actually, the more functioning you are and the higher level of productivity you have, it feels more like play more of the time. Gay Hendricks calls that your zone of genius. And Gillian Farabee talks about that play flow is really play at its highest level is your craft. And so it should feel a little bit like play, at least some of the time. Some people put percentages on it. I usually try to think that if I'm at least spending 25% of my time and it feels like play, that's the bare minimum. It should be more than that. And so I'm always trying to find a way, does it feel like play? So Annie F. Downs talks about following the fun. And so if it's not feeling like play, there's probably a need for change. And it's okay that you are following the fun. It's okay that you are looking for joy in your work. Because there's all kinds of research, I'm not going to go into it today, about why joy and play are actually just huge productivity generators. And so when you're experiencing change, follow the fun. So as my team and I are thinking about how we're going to redo and kind of up level the next season of the Joyosity podcast, one of the things that I just keep coming back to is what feels easy and fun for me? What feels easy and fun? Because that is going to translate to you, my audience. Because it feels like a drag and boring to me, it's going to feel like a drag and boring to you. There's no way to hide that. And so while there are some tasks that we all have to do, for me, spreadsheets and things like that, at some point I have to do those things, but that shouldn't be what I'm doing most of the time. And so for you, I need to follow the fun in order to lead you well as a listener and as somebody who's in the audience that I'm wanting to support and help. So following the fun is a really important part of creating change. So for me, the fun is live. I love it when people comment and ask questions. I love that my mess ups are just on display because the vast majority of people's lives are not recorded. We're not, although we do like to record a lot of things on our phone now, but the vast majority of life doesn't get recorded and edited and then presented. We're just live all the time with each other, which is part of the reason why I love live. So following the fun for me is like, okay, how do we revamp and edit and up level the podcast while still keeping that part, which is really fun for me. And that will translate to you. So is it working? Does it fit? And does it feel like play? If the answer to those questions is no, you've got some changing to do. And some of the things that can I'm just curious, what do you think gets in your way of change? We've talked about a few earlier on in the show today, but when I'm thinking about what gets in my way for change is that idea, that fear. And as I was saying earlier, the fear of what will other people think about this? One of my old stories, I have a lot of them, but one of them is people will think I'm flaky. If I change something, people will think I'm flaky because I haven't stuck with something long enough. I've just gone from thing to thing to thing. All kinds of meaning I've attached to that. Rather than thinking, if I'm going to serve them well, and I've grown out of something, it's not flaky, it's actually listening and being wise to move forward. So that fear can hold us back. So I'm just curious, when you think about change, where is your fear? Because if you don't identify your fear, you're not going to be able to get around it. It's okay to acknowledge the fear. One of my core values is valor, which is a strength of spirit in the face of fear that moves us to action. So it's okay that you feel afraid. You just have to identify what is the fear. I mean, some fear is good. You get that spidey sense feeling when you're walking in a strange street. You should listen to that fear. But sometimes our fear of what will people think, or I could do this wrong, those fears stop us from anything that's good. And they stop us from all of the benefits that are on the other side of change. The next thing that can be really get in our way are logical fallacies. So there's a whole bunch of logical fallacies, but the one that I think stops a lot of us in change is the sunk cost fallacy. Well, I've already been doing it for this long, so I might as well finish it. I've already been doing that. um I've already spent this much money, so I should just finish it out. Or I've already spent this much time looking for that picture. I'm already, if I stop, Facebook is going to scroll back to the top or whatever. I've already spent this much time. I need to keep going. That is a sunk cost fallacy, when actually stopping and doing something new is going to be more beneficial. Another one that is a logical fallacy that I think gets in our way a lot is the law of diminishing returns. So my daughter is graduating from high school this week, and I am behind in getting any kind of university apparel where she's going, like not apparel, decorations. And so I've been looking, can't find it. So I'm going to need to make something on Canva and have it printed at like the local print shop, which is fine. But it is going to be hard for me not to keep tweaking, like tweak, 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 tweak. And when we do that, when we just keep making it a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better, eventually we need to have a deadline. Otherwise, all of our effort doesn't produce an equal amount of great result. So the law of diminishing returns can get in our way when we decide to make a change to then actually access the next step. So those two logical fallacies, I think, are the ones that get in our way the most. There are lots of others, but I think those two, sunk cost and law of diminishing returns, are really important to remember when you're facing change. I will go with you, Shelby, where it's like, yes, content that is fun. If I am bored, you will be bored. Okay, so the last thing that I think gets in our way when we're creating change is compressing the process. So what I mean by that is creating change involves several steps. And those steps involve these ideas of the questions that you ask, the fears that get in your way, and then the ideas that you produce. So TED, ideas change everything. You've got to produce an idea. Then you have to figure out how I might do that idea. Is this idea valid, relevant, possible? And then you have to create action steps to get it done. Sometimes we compress all those together and we go from idea to that won't work, or idea to action. And we don't actually create something that is beneficial to us because we've compressed the process. So when you are thinking about change, it's important to think about the idea and let is it possible or not just sit off to the side for a little bit. As I've been doing this process of how do I want to change my Jolt of Joyosity email that I send you? How do I want to change the podcast? How do I want to change the way that we're doing the live? At one point, I was compressing it all because I was like, oh, if I don't do it live anymore, what does that mean for my team? Are they going to be able to handle that? Well, it was too soon. I needed to decide, is live the best way to record the podcast? How do I want to edit the podcast? Those are two different questions. And so compressing the process can be a roadblock to change. So letting the process have its space doesn't necessarily mean it takes longer, but in your mind, don't jump too soon to, is this possible or not? Let the idea live and breathe a little bit, and then find who can make it possible. So that book that's Who Not How, super powerful, that can help you create those kinds of changes. And the other thing, just remember, an outside voice is really helpful. I love to offer what I call spark calls. And if you go to jenwhitmer.com/spark-call, so jenwhitmer.com/spark-call, you can sign up for 15 minutes with me and I can ask you questions that can help you. Like, what is actually getting in my way? What's the thing that's stopping me here? What do I actually want? When do I want to do something about that? In 15 minutes, I can help you get to your next step. And I love to offer those. They're always really powerful for the people. Every single person always says, wow, this was so helpful to stop and think about. And we don't spend 15 minutes to get an outside voice to help us work through those things. 15 minutes to help you get to your next step, to help you get to that clarity, to spark that idea, to move on to what's next. So that's a little bit about what's happening here. Clearly, I don't exactly know yet what I'm doing. I don't know where we're going. The last episode of this season, I have to look at the calendar. We're going to go live on June 10th. And so the last podcast episode will come out on June 20th for the season. And then we'll take a break for a few months and come back. And as I decide how this gets revamped, you're going to be the first to know. But I can tell you this, I want it to work. I want it to fit where I am now. And I want it to feel like play for you and for me. I want it to be so helpful for you because there are so many things about work that we already know because we learned in these technical classes, but dealing with the people is what's really hard. And how do I put that all together? I was talking with a friend yesterday at church and I was asking about her oldest son, and he is a new engineer. And she's like, the work is great. The people are really hard. And I was like, yes, that's the thing. And so if I can help you deal with those complex people things so work is a joy and everybody feels connected and your business will profit, that's what we're going after. And that's what I want here in this space as well. And so that's what we're doing. And I'll let you know how we're going to do that later. So I hope that was helpful for you. And I'd love to hear how you are creating change or what changes are happening for you. And don't forget that spark call is a really helpful thing. And I forgot that that's what the QR code is. See, it's live. You know that it's live, and that's where we're going. And it's a really powerful thing to learn how to manage through change. And like I said, if Ted can change, if my kiddo can get rid of his 3T shorts, I can change how I am doing this. You can create change in your life that feels really positive for you too. All right, everybody. I will see you in 2 weeks on June 3rd with Allison Caffrey, and I will be back then. Bye, everybody. So let me put my coach hat on for just a sec. Don't just leave this here. Take a moment. What did you learn? What's your next tiny action step? Share this episode with someone and tell them. Connect with us to keep this conversation going. As always, I'm Jen Whitmer. Thank you for listening to Joyosity. I don't take for granted that your earballs have a lot of information coming at you. Please take a moment to rate and subscribe. It really helps more people join us in creating positive culture with complex people. So work is a joy, people are whole, and organizations flourish. Can't wait for you to join us next week.